The funeral of Renzo Casey drew 400 people to the church on Via Margherita, which told Alara everything about who her husband had really been, because she had only known maybe 60 of them. She stood at the front in black silk and did not cry. Not because she wasn't grieving, she was in a complicated way she didn't have language for yet, but because she had learned in 8 years of marriage to Renzo that composure was armor, and she had never needed armor more than she needed it standing in that church, being watched by 400 people she didn't know, at least a third of whom she was fairly certain hadn't come to mourn. The man who stood at the back of the church and didn't approach her was tall, dark-haired, with a jaw like something sculpted and eyes that moved through the crowd with the systematic efficiency of someone cataloging threats. He left before the service ended. She noticed because she noticed everything. It was how she had survived 8 years. His name, she found out 3 days later, was Matteo Greco. And the day he walked into her late husband's study, her study now technically, with a leather file and the kind of stillness that made rooms feel smaller, she understood that Renzo's death had not been an ending. It had been a door opening. "Your husband owed my family a significant debt," Matteo said. He sat across from her without being invited, which she noted. "Not financial." "Then what kind?" "The kind that transfers." Alara looked at him steadily. She had spent 8 years learning to look at dangerous men steadily. "I am not my husband." "No," Matteo said, and something in the way he said it suggested this was not a criticism of her. "You're considerably more." He laid out what Renzo had done with the kind of clean, documented precision that told her he had been building this file for years. Renzo had been laundering funds through a charitable foundation, her foundation, the one she had built from nothing, the one with her name on it, the one she had poured 8 years of genuine work into because she had genuinely believed, it was the one good thing in a marriage that had slowly revealed itself as a gilded cage. He had used her work, her credibility, her name. "If this becomes public," she said carefully, "the foundation is finished." "Yes. And everything it funds. The clinics. The schools." "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. "What do you want?" "I want the financial records your husband kept separately from his official accounts. I know they exist. I know you know where they are." He paused. "I also want to offer you a choice your husband never gave you." She looked at him. "What choice?" "Help me dismantle what he built. I'll make sure what's yours survives it." The problem was she didn't trust him. She was not supposed to trust him. He was Matteo Greco, which meant he came from a world that operated on leverage and loyalty and very little mercy, and she had exactly 0 reasons to believe his offer was anything other than sophisticated manipulation. But she went home and she sat in the office where Renzo had kept his secrets, and she found the records in 40 minutes because she had always known, on some level she had refused to examine, that something was wrong. She had just chosen not to look. She looked now. What she found was worse than Matteo had told her. Not because Matteo had hidden anything, because Renzo had. Including payments. Including names. Including the name of the man who had actually given the order that got Renzo killed. And it was not a Greco family name. It was a government name. She called Matteo at midnight. "We need to talk about what's actually in these files," she said. He arrived in 20 minutes, which told her he had not gone far. They spent 3 hours at her kitchen table with the documents spread between them and 2 cups of coffee going cold. She watched him work through the evidence with that systematic focus, never performing urgency, never dramatizing what he found. He was, she realized, genuinely brilliant, the kind of intelligence that didn't announce itself. "You already knew about the government connection," she said. "I suspected. I needed confirmation. That's why you needed me. That's one reason." He looked up from the documents. His eyes, she noticed for the first time up close, were a very dark brown, not black brown, with more warmth in them than his expression ever let into the rest of his face. "The other reason is that you are the only person in this entire situation who doesn't have blood on her hands and still has something to lose. That makes you the only person I can trust." That's a very transactional definition of trust. "I'm a transactional person," he said. "Usually. They usually sat in the air between them. The 3 months that followed were the most dangerous and most alive she had felt since before she understood what her marriage was. They dismantled Renzo's network carefully, surgically, feeding information to a prosecutor Matteo trusted, while protecting the Foundation's operations and the people who depended on them. Matteo kept his word at every step. She kept noticing that. When it broke publicly, the government official, the laundering network, all of it, Ilara stood in front of her Foundation staff and told them the truth about what had happened. Not all of it. Enough. She did not perform devastation. She performed what she was, a woman who had been used and was now methodically reclaiming everything with her name on it. Matteo was there. He stood at the back of the room the way he'd stood at the back of the church, watching. When it was over, he waited until everyone else had gone. The Foundation survives, he said. Because of the work we did. Because of the work you did, he corrected. I just cleared the path. She studied him. Matteo Greco, who operated in shadow and spoke in leverage, was standing in her Foundation's conference room looking at her like she was the most straightforward thing in his complicated world. What happens now? She asked. That's yours to decide, he said. I made you a promise. Kept it. Where it goes from here is not a transaction. She had buried a husband who was a stranger. She had spent 3 months working beside a man from a world she should have feared, who had never once been anything other than exactly what he said he was. Stay for dinner, she said. We'll figure out the rest. He stayed.